All right, so you guys, welcome to my weekly real estate investment club meeting, and we may have a few more people joining us, but either way, this conversation today will be available later on YouTube, just like we do every single week. And I will tell you that I think the sometimes the replays might be doing better than the meeting itself because I get so many messages and from people that have watched the video and they are finding out what we're doing and learning more about this weekly conversation that I started putting together this year. And that's fun. And for some of you all that are here with us today, I know some of you join when you can and others come when they can. But if you know anyone that is looking to get into real estate investing, this weekly conversation is it's an easy lift, as Francesca would say. I mean, it's an easy lift. If you've got time during your lunch hour on Friday, you can join us. You can hear from a speaker. You can learn some great information. Doesn't cost you anything. I never ask you to buy anything or anything like that. This is just an opportunity for you to really start getting an introduction to this business. Doesn't matter where you are. I know some folks join us and they're a little bit more experienced than others, but that's great. We all just come here to learn and network and get to know one another. And certainly, if you are meeting people within these meetings and or coming into contact within these meetings, certainly follow up with these people after and try to spend some one-on-one time with them and network and just continue to grow together. So that's what this weekly meeting is all about. And if you have any family, friends, people in your circle that you think could benefit from this conversation, please invite them to join you on a Friday. And today I've got a good speaker for you. He's actually pinch hitting a little bit here. Thought we were going a different direction this Friday, but Kenneth is always ready. So if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. And
Yeah.
Kenneth is somebody that always stays ready. And when I reached out to him this past Wednesday and asked him if he could join us sort of the last minute, he agreed to do so. Many of you will recognize Kenneth because he is someone that has been a regular in the meeting as well. Kenneth and I used to work together many years ago. That's why he's a superstar real estate professional today. He has been through the Navy SEALs training right there with me. So if Kenneth will tell you, I'm always looking for a quitter. And Kenneth was no quitter, and so now he's went off and he's doing even bigger and better things in Atlanta and has his own firm and just really well accomplished. So you'll hear from him today. He is someone that works even more than I do. He works more in the single family residential space. So he can talk about single family residential finance and certainly at a depth and level that oftentimes I can't even get to just because I don't see those opportunities as frequently as Kenneth does. But we'll reserve some time on the back end of this conversation, obviously, for questions. And there are no dumb questions, no matter where you're starting at. Just feel free to ask your questions. This is a safe space where you can express yourself and just be able to learn. And so, whenever Kenneth stops with his brief presentation, I will have a few questions that I'll ask just to get the conversation going. And then, as usual, I'll turn it over to you guys and let y'all engage directly. So, Kenneth, if you're ready, man, we can kick right into it. I would say maybe give them a good 10-minute solid
Mhm.
overview of sort of what the day-to-day looks like for you and the kind of things you're working on. And then I'm sure when we get into the Q&A, that'll be a big learning opportunity.
Sure. No, absolutely. Again, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. As you guys, as Algenon just stated, he did put me through the Navy SEALs training of real estate investing and financing, and so I'm so happy about that. So, yeah, my name is Kenneth Igwe. I'm the managing director for Baker Collins and Company. Very simply, we're a commercial mortgage brokerage firm. What I mean by that is we only work with investors. We have two divisions. One division is a residential division, to whereas we have a team that finances single family renovation projects, single family new construction, single family rental properties, otherwise known as landlord loans, otherwise known as buy and hold loans, otherwise known as, I know Algenon's not a fan of this word, DSCR loans. And then we have another division where we focus on small balance commercial, to whereas we will finance all six verticals of commercial real estate: office, retail, multifamily, industrial, hospitality, and special use. How I got started in this business, I should not have been in this business. I'm originally from Houston, Texas. came to Morehouse College, came to Atlanta, Georgia to go to Morehouse College and Georgia Tech University. So I was supposed to be an engineer. Got a math degree at Morehouse, got an electrical engineering degree at Georgia Tech. They have a program called a dual degree program where you can get two for the price of one. So I was like, hey, look, instead of being in college for 4 years, you get to have a little more fun and be there for 5. But you do get 2 degrees because of that. So I was supposed to be an engineer until I found this thing called real estate. Just reading about real estate and really understanding about it and just kind of understanding like what exactly it takes to be successful in real estate. And this is in the early 2000s, late 90s, where there was no YouTube. There wasn't as much information as real estate as there is now. So the way to kind of obtain information was to go to seminars. So I was a seminar junkie. Literally every single Saturday, I was a seminar junkie. I was at some one seminar. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of a guy named Russ Whitney. If you guys, there's Carlton Sheets, and then there's another gentleman, and who I went to a seminar, Ron LeGrand. I went to Ron LeGrand seminar, and again, I was just doing seminars, and this is after undergrad. I was working for IBM for about a year or so, and I was sad. I would literally go into the office and just be sad because I was looking around a lot of the folks I was working around, and I was like, I just did not want to do that. They look like drones. No knock on anybody who goes and who just has that. I was just really, really, it just wasn't for me. And so I started to I tried to wholesale a couple of properties, realized I wasn't a good wholesaler. For anyone who does not know what a wholesaler is, you're just essentially you're putting a property under contract, and you're assigning your interest into that contract and selling it off to an end buyer. Wasn't a good fit for me, but I started to renovate some homes because I would go to a lot of these seminars. But I went to one seminar that really changed the course of my life, and it was a Ron LeGrand seminar. He essentially said, he made one statement that just kind of left an indelible impression on me. If you play with pennies, you make pennies. If you play with dollars, you make dollars. And so by that one statement, literally course corrected my career. So I was trying to figure out, how do I play with bigger dollars? How do I get into this space of doing bigger projects after doing a couple of fix and flips, which I did pretty decent at. I think I sold like 3 or 4. I did better in doing renovation loans than I'd actually worked at IBM. However, because of that, I put myself on a trajectory to get into commercial real estate, how to get into commercial real estate finance. And I really like real estate, but I love finance. And so that just led me, I spoke to a couple of mentors and they said, hey, look, you got to go back to school. And so, hey, I'm a guy, if you give me a blueprint, I'm going to take what you've said and I'm going to do it. So I did go ahead and get back. I went and got my master's degree at Harvard University, got out of there, and then worked for a couple of firms before I met Algenon, where we're doing some projects in the late 2000s, right before, right after the crash. Had a fun time doing that, but realized, hey, look, you know what? Let's kind of think about some other things. Again, I have a lot of residential real estate experience, and I love finance. And so in 2015, we started Baker Collins, which is essentially the commercial mortgage firm that we work with now as well. And so what we do is on the residential side, we work with all investors. And what I mean by that is, and I know folks may not necessarily like hearing that, well, what do you mean by all investors? Whether you're just starting out, whether you've never done a deal before, whether you're looking to get into this space, do a renovation loan, do a new construction loan, do a rental property, that's fine with us. And we also work with very astute, very experienced investors as well. So to us, we are literally agnostic to the level of experience that you have. Now, when you're dealing in residential space, especially with anything that deals with construction lending, experience is definitely one of the biggest determining factors of what the deal is going to look like or how it's going to pencil. And so when you're looking at a renovation loan, let's assume, because a lot of our clients on the residential side are brand new investors. They just started, they've watched a couple of YouTube videos, they may have gone to someone's course, and now they're trying to understand the space. And we've realized that, hey, by them doing that, we have to be able to meet them where they're at. And so we want to make certain that when they get into this space, they understand terminology and jargon that is used in this industry. Because one of the things that really separates or delineates investors, from experienced investors, just the language that's used, because you have a lot of times where people are just kind of speaking different languages. You've got a very experienced investor who may be speaking Arabic and another inexperienced investor who's speaking, Chinese, and we got to both be speaking English. And so we want to make sure that people really understand that. So one of the things that we started to do back in 2018 is we actually teach folks. And so I'm proud to say that we did create the first continuing education course in the state of Georgia, to whereas we teach real estate investors and also realtors how to professionally acquire, renovate, build an investment property. And so we're really proud of that as well. But on the residential side, we want to make sure that people really understand what they're getting themselves into. And we also tell folks a lot of times, no, this is not a good deal. You have to walk away. Because when we look at a project, we look at it from an objective set of eyes. Our goal is to make certain that you get into a profitable project. And we don't like the F word. I'm not going to curse. What that means is foreclosure. Lending is a function of risk and leverage, right? When someone comes to us, someone comes to a firm like Wharton Gladden, what they're looking to do is they're trying to leverage the capital that they have, so therefore they can go out and buy a piece of investment property. Now, conversely, as a lending group, we have to, although we were working with our capital partners, whenever we pre-underwrite a deal, we're trying to make certain that our capital partners, their money is not as much of a risk as it could be. When you're getting into any type of investment, you always, especially real estate investment, we also have to understand that that's kind of what we're looking to do. So we're trying to mitigate the risk as best as we can, but then as an investor, you're trying to borrow or leverage your cash as much as possible. And so there has to be that fine line or that dance that we have to do. And so we want to make certain that we look at these deals in a way in which it makes sense. So for example, with renovation loans, because that's the popular one, that's the star quarterback of the residential space. That's the one that gets all the attention, all the fanfare, all the articles written about it, all the TV shows that are made about it. We want to make sure that people understand what exactly certain terms like loan to cost and loan to value are. We want to understand that people understand things like origination points. And some of you may think this is super elementary, but you would be surprised when someone was walking into an investment, have no idea what these terms mean. And these are folks that are pretty, they've saved up a good amount of cash, and they have resources, but they're looking to get into this space. So we want to make certain that they really understand what they're getting themselves into. And we also want to make them understand that we dispel a lot of the false narratives that are attached to this industry. Many times folks will come into this industry with these preconceived notions of what investment looks like. And the reason for that is because in some cases they're working with, or they've watched a YouTube video with someone who is is theorizing this industry as opposed to a practitioner. And so because we have closed well over 1,500 loans in the last 10 years, because we've closed over $2 billion in commercial real estate and residential real estate debt, we kind of understand what we're looking at. And so we know the archetype of the investor that was going to jump into these type of projects. We do not want someone to get into a deal that just doesn't make sense. So we are going to do an analysis, and we are going to make certain that their investment is protected. Because ultimately, many people find the word when they look at real estate investment, because it is, and admittedly, it is one of the easier investments that you can get into. That's one of the reasons why people love renovation loans. So that barrier of entry is not as many folks could make this a statement that it's not as challenging to get into as some other investments. However, what that will do is that does lead some folks to maybe have these incorrect assumptions as to what you can get into. So we want to make sure that people really understand that. We also want to make sure that people understand that, you investing is a function of a team. You have to have, this is a team sport. You cannot do this alone. You will never do this alone, especially if it's any type of construction, renovation. You're going to need to find really good general contractors. You're going to have to find folks, or even kind of vet out their general contractors. And we kind of have ways in which we show folks just how to do those little things. Because often when you have a renovation project or a new construction project, you have to be mindful of who your team is. You're only going to be as strong as your team. And when you get into bed with a renovation project, when you start a renovation project, you literally have told the world that you are going to start a project or start a relationship with a general contractor or subs, and that person is going to help you renovate this property, and hopefully sell it for a profit. Or if you decide to keep it as a rental property, benefit from all the benefits of the rental properties give to you. So we want people to understand these things. I'm really big on just making sure that people understand, because if you understand the theory behind it, if you understand the structure behind it, then if you can buy one or two, you can buy 500, right? But you have to understand the basics. There is no, you cannot get around the fundamentals. You have to understand the fundamentals, and you have to understand what the market looks like as well. And so with the renovation loans, I do not call them fix and flip loans any longer, because a lot of our clients now are holding on to properties. They're not selling them. They're realizing that there's so many benefits of holding on to an asset, whether it is a single family home or whether it is a duplex or triplex, or whether it's a 6 unit. And specifically, we deal with a lot of projects. We finance projects all over the country, but for the most part, we do deals most in the Southeast, Georgia, Florida, North and South Carolina, those top cities. And in those top cities, many times, a lot of investors will buy properties that are on the upswing. And so when you're selling properties, you can generate a good amount of cash flow. But in my opinion, I think Algenon will agree to this. If you're looking to create wealth, and that I use that term in air quotes because that's something that a lot of folks will say, but if you're looking to create a decent amount of revenue, you have to hold on to these assets. Like, you cannot keep selling and trading them. You benefit, and when you hold on to assets, you benefit from the cash flow. You benefit from the tax advantages. You benefit from the appreciation, just a general appreciation. You're also going to benefit from, if you decide to do it, the forced appreciation of that asset, doing something to the property so as you can increase rents. So I'm a big believer that you should consider holding on to property. So in the last, I would say last 4 years or so, a lot of our borrowers now are no longer selling those assets. They're holding on to them. There's a big, and this is pre-COVID, there was a big push for build for rent. And so there's another, you can make an argument that's a new asset class. And what I mean by that is it wasn't as attractive. Well, it wasn't as an asset class because now the capital markets have essentially created programs specifically for build to rent. We also finance a couple of subdivisions every year. And so with those subdivisions, we're starting to see some of those developers who are building subdivisions they are holding these assets in their portfolio because they understand what is happening in certain markets. They understand that there's appreciation that's happening that they want to tap into just by holding on to those assets, and make certain that that makes sense as well. So we just want folks to understand kind of what we do and also how we benefit from them, and also make sure that we educate them and let them know exactly what is going on in the market, what they're seeing, and how we can kind of help them grow and help them with their real estate journey.
Man, that was good. I taught you well, man.
You
I
did,
taught
you
you
did, you
well.
did, man. You did, you did.
Alvin's in my real estate course right now, and so
Mhm.
I hope he was listening very closely to some of what you were saying. And I think that Alvin, at least I hope Alvin would attest to a lot of what you just shared in the last 13 minutes or so is a lot of what we talk about in that course. And it's funny because you spent some time talking about building a team, and that's actually next week's class
Oh,
is how do you build your team and what does that look like? So thank you for sharing that good overview. I've just got a few questions for you. Then I really want to try to get the group in and let them ask some questions based on where they are in the process. But I picked on Francesca a little bit here, but I'm picking on her a little bit more. She is someone, as I mentioned, and I'm picking on Francesca, but Kenneth, that really the same question applies to so many people I talk to. She is someone that's trying to transition into real estate investing, and we've been trading messages throughout the year, and she's trying to figure out how to get started. And part of that is she recognizes that she does need to get educated and become more knowledgeable. But also, money becomes a real thing, right? Like, people are trying to figure out how do they get started. I don't think you could get anybody to say they don't want to be financially free and personally, have personal freedom, personal independence, Um, I often like to say that, whatever I'm doing day to day is because that's what I've chosen to do. Not because somebody said I had to do it or they're making me do it. But if you see me working on anything, it's because that's what I've chosen to do. And I want that same independence and freedom for everybody. I think it feels just it's so rewarding and fulfilling when you can just have that level of independence. So, Kenneth, my question is for somebody like Francesca and maybe many, many others who want that independence, they want to build wealth, they want to get started, money's an issue. What's your advice to them?
First, number one, start where you're comfortable at. So let's assume if, and what I mean by that is, and also try to figure out what are you trying to accomplish? Are you trying to generate a good amount of cash? And if you're trying to generate a good amount of cash, I would start with renovation loans, to do a fix and flip. And to do a fix and flip, typically it's going to look like this. You're going to have to bring 15% of the down payment of the total cost. It's going to be a 12-month loan. But you're going to have preferably a 660 credit score. Worst case scenario, 600. We do not advertise that. So we'd rather you have a 660 credit score as opposed to something as well. And you want to have a kind of a team. So I always tell folks, if you're looking to just generate a good amount of cash, and you would start with a renovation loan, because that's going to allow you to bring the least amount of cash for a project. And also you can turn your cash around. The average fix and flip takes approximately 6 to 9 months to from inception to sale in the United States. And depending on the market that you're in, that could be a little longer, it could be a little shorter. But let's assume it takes about 6 to 9 months. So I've seen people literally change their financial positions in 6 to 9 months. Um, there's 4 rules, in my opinion, that we teach our folks and we share with our folks how to get into a renovation project. Number one, you got to have the cash to close. Um, and we prefer that you have 30% of the total cost. What I mean by that is if the purchase price is $100,000, a renovation budget is $100,000, your total cost is $200,000. I would like to see 30% of that number in your accounts. And when I say accounts, it doesn't necessarily have to be in your bank accounts. We'd want to see it. We look at other cash equivalent accounts, IRAs, retirement accounts, things of that sort. 30% of $200,000 is essentially $60,000. That allows us to know that this is not that you're not going to overextend yourself, because oftentimes we see a lot of investors overextend themselves. You'll have something where someone will say, well, you don't have to bring any money to closing, there's 100% financing. Technically there is 100% financing available, but let me share with you how that works, because that's a very misleading marketing tool that a lot of folks will use. There's a thing called loan to cost and loan to completed value, or loan to ARV. Loan to cost is a percentage against the fixed cost of the loan. Loan to completed value, or loan to ARV, is a percentage against the future value. So whenever there's a renovation project, you can either give a percentage against the fixed cost or the future value. Most folks will say 100% financing against the fixed cost. I'm sorry, against the future value, but they will never do the other calculation. You always do those two calculations and use the lower of the two. I would never consider doing a deal at 100% financing. That's too much leverage. You always have to look at the back end. You always have to make the assumption that the market could go awry and you may have to hold on to this asset. But typically you want to have 30% of the total cost, a 660 credit score preferred, and then you want to have a strong team. And I'll end with this. That 30% represents so much to us, because what that represents is, number one, you have to have the cash to close. You are not going to bring 30% to closing, right? Your closing is going to be about 15% of the total cost plus closing cost. But it also represents to us that you have 3 months of monthly payments to make, because you are taking on a mortgage. Monthly payments will have to be made. That also represents to us that you have monies to start the renovation. Whenever there's a construction component to a deal, you have to start the renovation with your own resources, and we reimburse you as we see work being performed. And then lastly, and I would even make an argument, most importantly, you need to still have monies to live. That's why that 30% is so important to us. So you can literally take that number, reverse engineer that number, and figure out, what can I qualify for? And this is how we qualify our clients. How much loan, how much debt can we issue or offer this individual? I would start from there. If it's something where you just want to generate a good amount of cash, and then once you've generated a good amount of cash, you do a couple of fix and flips or renovation projects, and then you can kind of segue into rental properties. And then once you own some rental properties, now you can segue into, if you ever decide to do that, you can start working on some of the deals that Algenon's been financing for the last 20 years.
Now,
And
Kenneth, when I listen to that, I'm not in Francesca's bank account. You know,
mhm,
she may say, "Hey, I got plenty, got $60,000," but $60,000 sounds like a lot.
mhm.
Um, so you've seen so many people come up through the ranks and different investors and seen different people get started and so forth. So for somebody who says, "I've got $60 in my bank account," how do I get started? Like, what is it that she could be doing? I mean, is it finding friends who maybe want to
Yep.
invest in real estate, but sort of talk to her as if she's got $60 in the bank account?
If you have $60, there's still a number of ways in which you can enter into start real estate investing. You can do wholesale deals. That's one of the ways I've seen a lot of folks come up the ranks just doing wholesale deals. You're finding, and you're just literally a property locator. You're an investment property locator. That's all that means. And you're essentially earning while you're learning. And you can average anywhere between, I wouldn't do a wholesale deal for less than $10,000 for the amount of time that you spend. But you're earning while you're learning. Many of the wholesalers, what they'll do is they'll just start off wholesaling, they'll graduate into fix and flips, then they'll graduate into rental properties, then they'll graduate if they decide to do it. And I've known a lot of folks who've done this, they'll graduate into multifamily. Or you can partner up with folks. You're blessed to be in a city. I don't know what part of I would assume you're in the High Point, Greensboro area. Is that fair to say?
Yeah,
Winston-Salem.
Winston-Salem.
From
Winston-Salem.
Winston-Salem, the
Yeah.
Triad. So
Mhm.
there's a number of organizations. Obviously, Algenon knows pretty much everybody up there that you can start partnering up with. You'd be surprised how many people do have a good amount of cash, and they don't have the time to go out and find properties. So align yourself with those groups, those individuals, where you are essentially going to be the person who's going out making the offers. Number one, identifying the properties, making the offers, structuring the financing, managing the project from inception to closing, and create a decent equity spread in there for yourself. I've seen a lot of folks do that as well. And of course, friends and family. You can always go by and say, hey, look, are you guys open to kind of joining on this real estate journey with me? Here's what it's going to do. I'm going to do the work, and you guys bring the equity, you guys bring the capital, and we split the profits however we split the profits. So I'm saying is there is no reason why someone cannot get into real estate investing. It's just a function of how, do you want to or not? And so when everyone tells me I can't get into real estate investing, it's like I don't believe that. I don't buy that because you have the information, you have the network, you have the knowledge, and all you have to start doing is just start the process. It's going to feel odd, it's going to feel awkward, it's going to feel uncomfortable, but you're able to grow. And what you're doing is you're sowing seeds for really kind of creating the lifestyle that you want. Because what you're really doing is crafting a lifestyle. Real estate is just that instrument that allows you to craft some lifestyle that you want to.
I appreciate you sharing that. That was a great, thoughtful response. And so yes, Francesca, that was specifically for you. I
Thank
think
you.
what you picked up on was um, there's a lot of creative ways to
Mhm.
get started. And so the first year or the first 2 years that you start investing might not quite look the way that you think it's going to look, but you just got to get started, and you just got to just start out. And then a year later, 2 years later, a few years later, things will start to look more probably like what you see in your mind, and you'll be able to bring about your vision that kind of way. But you'll never get a chance to do that if you don't get started. And I think someone like you, I've followed you for years, and
Mhm.
I know what kind of discipline you have in that gym. And when it comes to what you put in your mouth, if you took that same level of discipline to real estate investing, I think you would blow people away. I mean, to be honest with you. So, Kenneth, thank you for sharing that. Let's move to a different question. I'll pick on Ash a little bit since we got a small crowd here. When I think about real estate investing, I feel like it falls in. A lot of people will say that real estate investing falls into three steps. they'll say you have to find, fund, and close.
Mhm.
And I believe it falls into four steps. I think you have to find it, you got to negotiate it, you got to fund it, and you got to close it. Because you can find deals all you want, but if you have no ability to negotiate, then you won't be able to structure a good deal. And even if you are a world-class negotiator, but you have no access to capital or funding, you won't be able to close the deal. So these steps really rely on one another. For someone new like Ash, Kenneth, I mean, talk a little bit about just how important it is to really have like solid financing sources and
Yeah.
capital partners lined up before you get too deep into this business.
No, absolutely. I think one of the things that one can do is definitely get capital source. And I'm a big believer, money is a commodity. It is a commodity. It's always been a commodity. However, the capital that you're seeking you're just not seeking capital. You're seeking smart money. You're seeking a group that can help you grow. Because anyone, and there's you literally Google hard money lender or Google renovation loan lender, you're going to find 50 different people that are going to be able to say what I'm essentially saying. But what separates them from some groups like us is the fact that we have been in the trenches and we're not a fly-by-night company. We've been started in 2015. You're looking for that relationship because that's what you're really looking for. And that relationship is that capital partner. Now, I'm a big believer that you should have 3 or 4 folks in your back pocket that you can go to for not only the debt, but also the equity. And so what I mean by that is you want to be able to have those groups that you have can call on and you can ask them, hey, look, what does this mean? Whenever you're having a conversation with a lender, have most people will have surface level conversations, but start to have deeper level conversations. What I mean by that is ask them, are you an investor? Or are you just someone who's just pushing? Would I just look like a input? Would I look like a cell in an Excel spreadsheet? What have you done thus far? Then I would also ask him, like, where do you see this company going? What type of investor are you looking for? Some folks want to work with very experienced investors. Some folks don't mind working with some of the new investors. You also want to make sure that people understand what you're looking to accomplish. Like you want to share with them, like have that conversation with investors, with lenders, and make sure that they understand what you're looking to do. Maybe you're looking to do 4 or 5 renovation loans and you want to graduate to do bigger deals. Or you want to just create we've got a lot of investors who've decided I want to have a renovation loan business and that renovation loan business is going to fuel my multifamily business. But I'm never going to go leave that renovation loan business. So you got to figure out what are you guys looking to do there as well. But you want to definitely have those conversations. You want to know what are they looking to do. I would always try to figure out how long have they been in business. Are they going to be here next year? 2023, 2024 in the residential lending space, a lot of groups like ours were either acquired or went out of business. It was a tough year. Those last 24 months were tough years. So, you know, how long have they been here? Are they going to be here next year? Are they going to be the last thing you want to do is call up a lender and they're no longer in business. That happens quite a bit, especially in the renovation loan business, renovation investment loans sector. But just have those conversations and have deeper conversations with folks and see, is the is the area that you're looking to do. Okay, admittedly, there are some groups that don't like certain zip codes. Now they can't technically say that, but there's questions that you can ask because some zip codes are very, let's be honest, there's some challenges there. But some of the challenged zip codes have, in many cases, have the biggest, especially here in the city of Atlanta, some of the most challenging zip codes 10 years ago are now, I mean, because of what's the word? Gentrification now have been some of the most, those appreciation on those zip codes have been amazing. But you just want to have those conversations with them and have deeper conversation with lenders. And I think when people look at lending, they just think money is a commodity, but you're looking for smart capital. You're looking for a relationship to be built. You want to have that relationship with 3 to 4, no, about 5 lenders, in my opinion, especially in this space, because they're always trading money. Some folks are in the capital markets and they're selling debt, so they have to wait for the debt to be recapitalized and things of that sort. And I would also recommend that you have a relationship with local, national, and regional lenders. And the reason for that is because the local guy is going to be able to write a check much faster than the more institutional group. You're going to get better pricing and better terms if you go institutional. But that local guy who's been around that area, probably grew up there, seen everything you could see in 30 years, doesn't necessarily need an appraisal, can close his deal after the title search in 72 hours once he gets his loan docs. You want to have that person on your phone. You definitely, but you also want to have the institutional guys as well, because those guys are going to give you better pricing when you need better, when you have more time. So just have that mix of folks that you have in your pipeline of of lenders. And also, I'm a big believer, you want to start figuring out how to raise the equity for these projects. One of the biggest challenges for a lot of newer investors is, where do I get the down payment? Where do I get the down payment? Where do I get the down payment? Start having those conversations early. And a lot of investors will tell me this, and I'll wrap up on this. I don't like asking for money. And I think that is just, you're doing yourself a disservice when you say things like that. When you're getting into investing, you're never asking for money. You're always offering an opportunity. And I always tell people that you got to start to change it. You have to flip that switch in your head and let people know you are offering an opportunity. Do you want to be a part of this opportunity that I'm offering? And so that's the way, in my opinion, to start the conversations of getting the equity that you're going to need to essentially add it to the debt to get into these projects.
No, that was good. Thank you, Kenneth. And I'm certain Ash will most likely follow up with you after this. He's a pretty sharp guy and hungry for information. So I'm sure he'll want to get together with you at some point. Um, and if you ever cheated on your wife, Kenneth, Ash will find out because the guy's a master researcher or something. He knew everything
That is an
about me when
amazing
he called.
analogy.
Knew everything about me when he called me. So I said, "Geez, I didn't know." I didn't know if he was a student or if he was with the Secret Service, or something like that. But no, really sharp guy. Make sure you give him some time when he
Yeah.
reaches out to you because I know he will. All right, so Alvin is, like I said before, he's in my class right now. He's got a couple more classes to go, and then he will be done. And I know he is very anxious to get out and start chasing his first deal. He has sort of landed on the idea that he wants to start out doing fix and flips. That's going to be his strategic focus. You come across a lot of people. You've closed 1,500 deals. What are some common mistakes that you see that people make when they are stepping out like Alvin does?
Oh, how long do we have? Um, so common
Well, he's not
mistakes.
going to make a lot of
Yeah,
mistakes per
yeah,
se.
yeah.
He's cash certified here. You know what I mean? But
So common mistakes. Number one, I want folks just get pre-approved first. Figure out what you're qualified for. One of the mistakes that so many newer investors will make, they will go put an offer on a property, put earnest money down, and then come to us, and the deal doesn't work, but they're 2 days outside of their due diligence period. Now they want us, or they're like 48 hours, and it's going to take us between 24 hours to 48 hours to really pre-analyze this deal. So if you come to us and you already have it property under earnest money, and you have like a limited due diligence period, or your earnest money due diligence period has expired, well, you just put yourself in a really bad spot, because there's a strong possibility in many cases, if you have a seller, that seller has every right to that earnest money that you just put in. It's good to have a conversation with your lender prior to putting a property in a contract. Like, that is the thing that drives me batty. Have that conversation, see if the numbers can potentially work, and then put the earnest money in there. Because I've seen a lot of people, again, I used to feel really bad about this, but then I was told by my team, it's not your fault. I didn't force somebody to put earnest money prior to, and I've seen people lose a lot of money. It's a painful mistake. That's a painful lesson. They didn't do it again, but I'd recommend to have that conversation first. That's the biggest thing. Get pre-approved, have conversation with your lenders, figure out if the deal even makes sense to move forward with. Number two, make sure that you have a really strong general contractor on your team. Make sure you have a really, because that general contractor, in my opinion, is probably more important than the lender that you're working with.
Mm.
because you're literally getting in bed with someone for 3 or 6 months. I'd recommend to number one, by identifying a general contractor, go to the Secretary of State website, make certain that they're on the Secretary of State website, get a copy of their general contractor license, get a copy of their insurance, and make certain that all three of those things are consistent. John Smith contracting on the Secretary of State should match John Smith on insurance information. If you start to see inconsistencies, Houston, we have a problem. And I see that quite a bit because a lot of folks will work under someone else's general contractor license. And that just causes a humongous challenge. What I also would recommend when you have identified a general contractor, go to one of their job sites or two of their job sites. Sit out there, get a lawn chair, like literally get a lawn chair. See how orderly they are. See how they treat their subs. See how they manage this project because you're vetting them, and I cannot speak enough about general contractors. You are vetting them, and they're the person who is going to be the person who's going to transform this renovation project for you. And then also get a very competent realtor. Anybody can list a property. Anybody
Mm.
can show a home. You want somebody who understands that market at a level that you just don't. I tell a lot of our investors, clients, go find a consultant. Don't just find a realtor. Find a true consultant. Someone who understands the market dynamics. Someone understands what's going on in this area. Someone understands what new developments are happening. Someone understands, what colors are being put in. Somebody who understands that market so well because they're your consultant. You know,
Mm.
I'm that word realtor is definitely you can apply that to there. What is it? 20% of realtors made a paycheck last year. It's like, and I'm getting the numbers wrong, but it was such a paltry number. 80% of the people have the title of realtor have a W-2 job, and there's nothing wrong with a W-2 job, but they are not in the market that way. They are focused on their W-2 job, and then they have a real estate license as a side hustle. Work with the real estate agent who does not have a W-2 job and who is a consultant, because that real estate agent, especially if you're doing renovation loans, you want them to assign, they're going to help you find the property. And when you're renovating the property, they're going to always almost act as a part-time project manager. And then when the property is fully renovated and you want to sell it, you want them to sell it as well. And so a good agent's going to know, well, I can work with Alvin, and that's 2 commissions in 1 year. That's why really good agents, they don't need 100 investors. They need maybe 10 if they know what they're doing. So find a really good agent. Get pre-qualified, have conversation with your general contractors, have a really strong agent. And those general contractor and the agent, it's nirvana when they all start to communicate with each other. That's when you start to see systems being built out. Whereas now you can see folks that are doing 2 deals a year, 3 deals a year because now their team is communicating with each other. And lastly, I'd recommend once you have identified your agent, you've identified your general contractor, you've identified your closing attorney, your title agent, take them out to dinner. Get them to know each other
Mm.
because you're creating a community, you're creating an ecosystem, and you want them to know each other, but you want them to know that, treat this business as if it is a business, not as if it's just a part-time gig. And many times, a lot of investors will come into the space and they will treat it as a part-time gig. If they just did these little things, because our most experienced investors, they're constantly bringing their teams together and having a lunch with them and hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? Want to get your perspective? And it's just, I love seeing when investors, they get their teams together and they're having these conversations about this one investor's project because they know that this one investor is essentially helping them grow as well. It's just, I just love seeing that. I love seeing that.
No, that's very good. Thank you, Kenneth. So guys, we've got about maybe I say 5 or 6 minutes left before we need to move into close. I think Kenneth's done a really great job on hitting on a few different areas, but he may not have hit on the area that you were hoping to hear about the most. So if you'd like to ask him a direct question, we've got a few minutes left for that if anyone wants to jump in.
I have a question. How best to connect with you offline, Kenneth, if we want to further discuss some some possibilities with you as it relates to real estate.
Call my cell phone. I'm a pretty easygoing guy, man. I don't have. I mean, we've got an answering service and all. Just I can.
Want to drop it in the chat
Yeah,
so
I'll just drop
everybody
it in
can
the
see
chat.
it, and you guys, because like I said, maybe a couple others might want to follow up with you directly as well.
I'm gonna put my email address in there as well.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Ash or Francesca, y'all got any questions you want to ask directly to Kenneth before we move towards closing, or?
Yeah, I'll ask one. I just wanted to confirm real quick. I know you mentioned when you're trying to generate cash for a fix and flip, you mentioned you should have 30% of the total costs in cash. So could you go over again what that entails? Is that like the closing costs and the renovations, all that makes up the 30%?
Yeah, so you're not gonna bring 30% to closing. We want to just see 30%. And so I don't want to scare people. Many people have more cash than they think that they do, right? What I mean by that is 30% can be, that's the aggregate, that's the total of what's in your bank account, checking and savings. That's also retirement accounts, 401ks, any other cash equivalent account. We want to know that you have some liquidity to pull from when something happens, when something goes wrong in a renovation project. Because in renovation projects, oftentimes something will go awry. So that 30% render that essentially says to us, and again, this is not an industry thing. I wish the industry would do this more because it would save a lot of deals. And although people say that that's a big number, Kenneth, I don't have the, I just want to see that. And that's why we can't work with everybody. And that's okay. But we don't want, you'll never see someone who'll say, Kenneth ever put you in a bad deal. Like if you don't have that cash, real estate investing is meant for folks who have disposable resources. And if you don't have disposable resources, you have to get creative about finding someone who does. That 30% again represents your cash to close. Your cash to close is going to be somewhere around on a renovation project, 20% of the total cost. 15% is a down payment, and then 3 to 5% for closing costs. That other 10% is going to that says to us that you have monies to make monthly payments. You have monies to start the renovation project, because typically most contractors are going to want a deposit, and that deposit can range anywhere between 10 to 20% of the construction budget. So you have to have those resources in place as well. Now you can do subcontractors and things of that sort, but we just want to see that, because we have to assume, again, I hate to say this, that every single deal, no matter how attractive someone looks on paper, that every single deal there's a possibility of a foreclosure. We have to assume the worst case scenario. So we want to make certain that you've got the 30%. That 30% represents the cash to close, 3 months of payments, monies to start the renovation, and then of course we do not want you spending your last dollar on a renovation project. Because if you spend your last dollar on the renovation project, your personal residence will always be paid before your investment property. Always. No one's going to, unless they have an intention, unless they intend to live in that property, which we are not allowed to do, by the way, because there was a nice little law that was passed back in 2010 by called Dodd-Frank, that prohibits groups like ours to lend monies to folks who are planning on living in properties, investment properties. So we cannot lend monies to somebody who's we can't even lend to you personally. We have to lend to you corporately. So you have to have an entity in order for us to even work with you, which is very simple. You want that. That's a asset protection play as well. But I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you for that. It's just basically having that liquidity available.
Yes.
Expecting
Yes.
unexpected. Gotcha. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Francesca, did you want to work in a question? We got a couple more minutes, or
like currently I live in a townhome. I know you said you don't lend money to those who plan to live in properties. Now, I guess in my current situation, my plan, I moved in this property 7 years ago. It's my first home that I bought. And it's around everything that's up and coming around Haynesville area in Winston. And my intention was to keep this as an investment property because it is in a very good neighborhood and area. And I've realized that I have the potential to pay it off, if I'm able to increase my income a little bit by switching jobs within the next 5 to 6 years. And, if I can move somewhere else, obviously I can rent this out. I guess what's the success you've seen with rental properties. I know that's going to be a new area for me. That's eventually what I want to do, is like make this a rental property short term.
No, that's perfect. That's okay. If you move
Okay.
out of the property, now we can refinance it and set it up as a rental property. As
Okay.
long as you don't live in the property while you have our resources, our monies, our capital partners funds, you're fine. So
Okay.
that we have a lot of folks who will do just that. They have bought their starter home. They do not want to sell their starter home because it fits the model as to what you just stated. They will move
Mm-hmm.
to that home. They'll refinance it into that property. However,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to talk myself out of a deal right now. One of the things that I always ask when someone wants to refinance with us, especially if I know that they have residential non-investment debt, you don't have to answer this question. I don't want this question to be answered. I don't need you to answer the question. Our interest rate is going to be higher than what you're currently paying for right now. I don't even need to know what your interest rate is right now, because I'm going to make the assumption you bought it 7 years ago. And typically investment debt is more expensive than residential, than primary residence debt. So I wouldn't recommend, unless you absolutely needed to refinance with a firm like ours. I would probably keep that rate that you currently have. There's no benefit for you doing that unless you needed to pull cash out, which I would always still ask, and hopefully the cash you need to pull out is going to allow you to get into some other investment. But if you have a great rate, do not interrupt that great rate, because that great rate, to me, that's better cash flow, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I appreciate it. Yeah, I did refinance, and I do have an excellent rate and a 15-year mortgage. So I
Okay.
pretty much got it. Yeah. It's
So
like,
you can either blink your eyes or nod your head. Typically
yeah.
right now, our best rate for residential investment DSCR programs is 6.25. So if your rate currently is lower than 6.25, then I would not even touch it. If it's higher than 6.25, you may want to consider it. But I'm going to make the assumption it's probably lower than that.
Greatly.
I figured.
Well, Kenneth, man, this has been good. I think that our group today got a lot out of this conversation. Thank you for not only making a good presentation, but also speaking directly to each person's situation, because I know that helps out a lot too, as they start to think more and more about how they actually start their investing journey. And to our guests that made it to today, thank you for making time. And you could have been out having lunch at Applebee's or TK Trips or whatever, but you decided to spend your lunch hour with us, and I don't take that lightly, and I'm grateful for your presence. So, you've heard me say this a couple of times. I do have a real estate course that I do offer to folks. I am getting ready to start my third cohort in the beginning of July. I am very excited about that. Kenneth and I have talked back and forth throughout the year, and he has helped me with modifying the course and making it better, more effective. And so I'm very excited. So if you feel like that course is something that you want to entertain or learn more about, certainly reach out to me. I'd love to talk to you. Also, if you want to speak with a former student, I'm happy to connect you to one of my students and also let them talk to you about the experience that they have. I feel pretty confident that they would say it's been very positive. So that does start in early July. If you also, even if you're not ready for the class, but you know someone that might be ready for the class or who could benefit from the class, I would appreciate that referral. And then next week, June 27th, I will have Lou Baldwin here as our guest speaker. And if you are from the Triad area of North Carolina, you will recognize Baldwin Properties. They are probably one of the largest scattered house property managers in Forsyth County. And Lou Baldwin has been around the real estate industry for probably longer than I've been alive. And his actual great grandfather started Baldwin Properties more than 100 years ago. So his family has been in the industry and the business for an extended period. Lou used to be the president of the Realtors Association. He's on the national board for the National Realtors and works with Congress, and he flies off to global conferences. So this is a really, really connected guy, and we're lucky to have him join our investment club meeting next Friday. So please come back if you can. again, this conversation today will be available on YouTube. So you can just search out Algenon Cash, and I'll have this up later today. All of our previous conversations are housed there as well. And then I also do a lot of, I've got a weekly radio show. So I typically talk about business, the economy, real estate, different things on that show. And all those episodes are archived as well on YouTube. So you can find them there. If you are on Facebook, search out Real Estate Investors Alliance. I'd love for you to join the group, and certainly working to get the group more active. And then if you're a LinkedIn fan, we have that same group set up on LinkedIn. So we're just trying to grow this community. And I think as we grow this community, we could help a lot of people and, have a lot of fun, make some money at the same time. I've always said that real estate has literally changed my life. It's put me in rooms that I thought I would never be in and allowed me to meet folks and take care of my daughter and just do a lot of the things that I've wanted to do in life. And I think real estate can change your life too. So again, thank y'all for today. It's right at 1 o'clock. I'm gonna get you out of here. I hope everybody has a great weekend. Thank y'all.
Thank you. You
Thank you.
too.